if all of you troll the assorted art sections of bookstores and libraries like I frequently do in search of new textbooks, you're bound to have seen at least uh, five five books by him. And but anyway, let me give it out to cartoonist, illustrator, and art educator Christopher Hart.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for inviting me, Bill. I know Bill from the Graphic Arts Guild. So I prepared a little something in advance. I'll be happy to tell you some of my background if that's interesting to you, and how I got to do a bunch of books, and also how many books I've sold and things that have gone on. But also I prepared something very specific I thought might be interesting to this group, because at all levels of cartooning, sooner or later, you're going to think about publishing a book. Might be a children's book, might be some other kind of book, might be a self-published book. But I thought I would offer some, information you may not get other places, which I think could help. So would you like me to start right with that, or start with my background? You guys tell me.
Whatever you like. And are we going to go with what we discussed earlier, where I at my screen share and I open?
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Why don't I wait for that for my background? Can you do a little bit about that? I can introduce what I've done. But I used to go on social media, and I'd see people giving each other advice on what they should do to get published, what they should do to submit something. And I was thinking, whoa, that's that's not going to work. That's going to be like a red flag. And these are common sense things, but they're not necessarily the way things work. And you have to really have been around the publishing business. I've had over 100 books published, and also about 30 more compilations. And you learn something after a while. You learn a lot of things, otherwise why are you there? So I thought I'd tell you, and you could use this or not use this. This is all based on my opinion, my experience. Obviously, you have your experience, your opinion. You want to. This is not legal, advice. It's just what I found valuable. I thought I'd tell you, because I think it's, I'm talking. I think it'd be interesting to you too, just to note, even if you're not going to use it. I thought I'd tell you the first thing is, if you have a book that does well, and people like it, and retailers like it, it's not the only thing you can do, but one good choice may be to do a sequel, even if you weren't really thinking of a sequel. And the reason is, retailers want it. They look at your sales, they see that you did well with that, and it gives the publisher a good thing to say, a good talking point. This is his next one. You like the other one. So sometimes that's a good thing to do. And you can be just as creative in a sequel. You can reinvent everything in a sequel. But I just thought I should mention that, because sometimes you think your first book, then here's your second book, then here's your third book. And, have a little patience sometimes and get a track record. It's not a bad idea. But one thing you have to also be aware of is a balancing act, that generally, the general thinking is in publishing that the further out you go in sequels, the less strong the sales may be. So at some point, you may want to jump off of your own series, even though you could do more. Even though it would, people are interested in seeing what it is, you may want to start something new. And I know I'm talking about sequels, I might sound like crazy, but if you have one book, the second book could be a sequel, or the third or fourth. It's just something to keep in mind. If you do a Christmas story, and then you do some other things, you have another idea for a story that's around Christmas, I'd say, the Christmas one sold really well. Why couldn't this be a sequel to that? Just an idea, just to kind of open. I was telling Bill that some creativity is a lot of times only left on the page, whereas if you kind of understand how the market is, you can be creative with that. And it's another dimension. It gives you more to work with, because you weren't thinking that way before. For instance, if I were to ask you what's the most important cover on a book, if I ask somebody else, so you're all very wise and savvy, and I say out of the 3 covers you have on a book, and they look at you like, the 3 covers? I say, yeah, let's say we're talking about a bookstore. A bookstore. You want to be in a bookstore. You're the kind of book where a bookstore is important. Well, the cover is very important. And the job of the cover is to make you want to open it, make you want to buy it. It's not to tell the story. It's not so they fall in love with the characters you fall in love with. It's to help them make a decision that you want them to make. You have a lot of things to work with. There's a lot of things, but I'm not talking about that one. That's the second, to my mind of thinking. Because if you see a book in a bookstore, face out, it could be paid for. People pay for that, like they pay for end caps. So to my mind, starting out early on, I recognize that the most important cover, which you're not necessarily shown by the art director, especially the front cover, back covers, I want to see the spine, because they're all, let's see if I got a book here I can show you. Yeah, this is an old one. This is what a book looks like in a bookstore. It looks like this. It does not look like this in the bookstore. It looks like this online, but not in a bookstore. On bookstore, this is the most important thing. This cover is supposed to say, this spine is supposed to say only one thing: pick me up. Pick me up. So if you get too creative, too precious with the fonts, with everything, this is a billboard, in my opinion. And the most important thing is not how great the font is, it's contrast. If you have a powder blue lettering on a light yellow background, they're not going to even notice it. It could be the greatest font in the world. So I'm just telling you again, just my opinion. That's all about contrast. That's what we're about. I want to see it. I want to read it. Some great things, if you're a medieval like story, it could look involved and intricate. And I mean, I've got 5 seconds to talk to my reader. That's it. The back is a different story. The back is where they have more time. It's all about telling someone what's in the book. It should be interesting, can't drone on, but you have time in the back cover. The back cover is very important. You really want to tell them what's in it, why they'll like it, what's good about it. And the other thing I was taught early on by the head of marketing at the publisher I was with. She said, this is how a person, I didn't know, I was just new. She said, this is how a person we think picks up a book. Whoops. They pick it up like this. They look at the cover. They look at the back cover, and then they flip from back to front. So what I'm telling you is that if let's say you're having a book and you have everything in the front that's really exciting, because that's where everyone starts reading, and you don't in the back, you might miss your reader. They might be flipping from back to front, and you have everything interesting in the front, and they're on the back. Now, this is not, I'm not to say these things you have to do. It's just considerations. And maybe a lot of people are flipping the other way now, but this is how it's always worked for me. It's just, and someone could give you some other advice, and that's great. But I think getting advice from somebody who is in the publishing business is really important. And you can find these people too. So I also thought I would tell you, there's a few more things, and it can be question and answer stuff, but this is good, right? Is this okay for this sort of stuff? Certainly. All right. This is people you would work with at a publisher. So you have an idea who they are. First, there's an editor, and she may read your book. She may, or he may get this submission and buy the book, but that person has to go someplace to get the okay. They're going to work with you. Sometimes I've had the experience to get it in shape so that they can submit it to, the creative director, etc. If you submit your stuff to an acquiring editor, that's a different level of editor. They can buy it. They can just buy it. They're in that position. So that's always great. Both can be very talented people, but someone else can buy it. And there's also, and you could talk to either of them. They want to talk to you. You're the author. They want to know what you think. Writers are sometimes worried. or artists, they're gonna try to railroad over your stuff. I've never seen that. They are like, that's why they're working with you. If they knew how to do it, they would do it, but they're good at what they do, and it's editing. There's the art director who will be working and laying everything out. It's a very important job. Sometimes you get to talk to and work with the art director, sometimes you don't. Director of sales is very important. Now you think, director of sales, I'm an artist, I'm not in sales. Well, you might not be in sales, but sales may come over to your editor and say, we're looking for somebody who can do a book on this. Do you think your guy can? And then they will have gotten that information from the retailer. So it's a very important chain. Everybody's important at a publisher. There's creative director. He or she is in charge of the whole direction of the backlist. Everyone knows what a backlist is? Front list is what you're publishing that season. Backlist is all the stuff before it. And some publisher likes to keep that going, but the front list is generally what's next on the docket. This person is head of marketing. When I was I had like 4 or 5 books at my first publisher, and the head of marketing was just hired. She came over to me. She said, "These aren't like 4 or 5 different books. This is a series you're doing." I said, "I am." She said, that's what you're doing." I didn't see it that way, but she's head of marketing. So it's interesting. They have ideas. People are good at what they do. There's publicity. It's not all that active in as much as it used to be, in my opinion, at book publishers. There's the publisher, and you might think, a publisher, I'm not going to ever get to speak to him. Not necessarily. No, if they like your book, they want to get to see who you are. They want to ask the editors, "Hey, who are you working with now?" And they like to know what's going on. And the distributor is also very important. Distributor, sometimes a big book publisher will have their own distribution arm, and they'll distribute your book and books by other companies maybe, and that's part of their business. But with smaller or medium companies, a lot of times they'll share a distributor with somebody else. You're generally not going to talk to a distributor because they're really not. They're related to your business, but as a client. So there's a client, the kind of relationship between them. So anyway, I guess I wanted to let you know there are a bunch of different players, and be curious. If you have an opportunity to talk to one of them, talk to one of them, and see what they think and consider it, because they're all in the book business. They want your book to do well. So anyway, I would also tell you the time frame when you hand in a book. Generally, in my experience, it's always been the same. I mean, it could differ, but it's about 18 months until it's back until it makes it to the shelves. It's a long time, and you hand it in, and then sometimes it's like it could be 4 or 6 months before you hear anything back. And in that time, they're working on it. Editors working on it. They're pitching it talking to the distributor about it. The art director's got a beat on it. They come up with cover ideas, and all of a sudden, boom! You get hit with this like a little bit of a little storm of activity, and it's exciting because you see how someone else sees your work. You had just thought of it yourself. It's all just on the page. Your drawings are this in a raw way. Suddenly, you're seeing it, and they'll have specific questions. When you do this, do you always want to do this? Because you do this on page 96, but 94, you do something different, and you might think. You should give an excuse if you didn't think of why you did that. It's better to say, I don't know, I didn't consider that. Maybe I should do that. And sometimes they're really good suggestions. There's stuff about agents, publishers, but I didn't go into that because I thought I could just go on forever and I wouldn't be getting your input. But I thought I get excited about sharing this kind of information. And so I thank you for letting me tell you. I hope it's of interest. And if there's something else you want to talk about, I'm all ears.
Okay, cool. Anybody have any questions? Yes, Dale.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes.
you. First of all, it's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Hart.
Chris.
Chris. I've seen your books on the shelves for God, decades now.
Oh, thanks.
My curiosity is, because your books are, I mean, they're almost seminal. I mean, you see them in libraries, you see them in bookstores. I would assume that they're geared for younger adults and kids and beginning artists. Does the bookstore, the publisher, get that kind of demographic feedback about the customers? Do you find that it's kids buying them, adults buying them, parents buying them for their kids? Do they give you that kind of info so you can tailor your books?
There's a lot of information that you can get as an author if you have a good relationship with your publisher, and but that's not the kind of information that what you're talking about can be gleaned much more easily. For instance, if I have children's books, and they're really for, a lot of times they're for 4 or 5, 6-year-olds, and they're selling nicely. You know the parents buying them. I mean, kids not going there. Here's my Milky Way bar. Can I have the joke? But so anyway, so you know what's going on. And however, also, we would find out sometimes that books that are geared toward upper teens sometimes are also being bought by parents or grandparents for younger kids. And you didn't realize you had that market as well. So you can get it by the sales and by the reviews. But there's also where you also know where they're putting it, because some stores will certainly have very regimented sections for for their books. Like, this is where the kids' books are. This is where the adult books are. This is the teen books. This is the graphic novels. But some books aren't like, some stores aren't like that. Some stores will just have a whole bunch of books on how to draw. And my younger books will be there. My older books will be there. But I also have books that are for adults. If there's a serious book on figure drawing, and it doesn't have a genre like manga, cartooning, or superheroes. Books on basic drawing, on projects. That's for adults also. I mean, not that kids can't use it, but it's geared toward that. Thanks for seeing so many of my books. That's so cool that you saw so many.
Yeah. Anybody else here? Feel free to.
I'm kind of looking forward to seeing Chris's work.
Oh,
the samples
got
that
that.
Bill had, that looked
Okay,
amazing.
well, if everybody's ready for that, I'll put on the screen share and bring them up. Okay, so where would you like?
Thanks, Bill. This is my newest one. There's a page out of it. It's called Drawing with Squiggles and Wiggles. And it's like instead of an ordinary shape like a circle or a square, it's these kind of wacky, kooky shapes. And you can begin the character anywhere. Instead of, like, for instance, this doesn't start with a structural squiggle. I start with a regular head shape, and the squiggle becomes the hair, the all-enveloping hair. I came up with this idea because I was walking along one day and I just thought of the alliteration of, well, it's not really alliteration, but almost rhyme of squiggles and wiggles. I thought it was a really fun idea. And I kind of sat on it for a long time. And then one day I just thought, I got to do this thing. And it was fun. It was really fun to do this book. It was a completely cheerful book,
Christopher, have you seen a progression over the years? Obviously, you've published for more than 2 years now. Is there a taste that's slowly changed with your publishers or the audiences? And is Squiggles and Giggles then kind of an answer to that?
So this is, you mean the zeitgeist or the feeling?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, as everyone said, your books are ubiquitous, but they're also a little bit of the heartbeat of where pop culture is. And as you went through the manga stuff, obviously, are you coming out of that, or is this?
No, I've got one coming out this fall. I think a really nice one on manga, and it's called what's it called? The Manga 100, the Cute Collection.
Okay,
it's a really adorable book. But
Why?
yes, I do like to find things that are interesting to the reader. I like that. To me, it's like having like a bullseye somewhere like 30 yards away. I'm going to try to hit that, and then that's part of the creativity for me, trying to find that the joy in that as well. But things have changed in many ways. And oddly enough, I don't think they've changed so much due to the digital revolution. It really isn't so much that. It's just that certain things that were popular have gotten much more popular. And certain things you don't see that much of. It's like, well, all the superhero stuff, and I did a bunch of books on superheroes, and I did some ones that were very popular, and one or two that weren't. There used to be sort of bright and cheerful, good fighting bad, but they're, in my experience, my opinion, they're mainly generally dark, intense, and it's not like a great idea to come up with, for me, to come up with a dark book on how to draw something. It's like always it should be an uplifting or dynamic, experience.
Yeah.
Maybe someone else can do it, but as far as kids are concerned, I rarely give a demonstration to kids. Once in a while, I get invited to like a local art center. I'll do a thing.
Yeah.
I think that nothing's changed. It's so funny because in a very endearing way, because what happens is I'll demonstrate something very slowly, and they're watching intently. And the minute I stop, boom, their heads go down, and they're to come up for air for like 10 minutes, not even a breath. And then it comes up, and it's done. They're totally immersed in what they do. And it's kind of admire that immersion. I think that's what a lot of us have, what we do.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
What books did you read when you were learning to be an artist?
Me, for art or just in general?
Oh, well, I'm thinking for art, like in art instruction books.
Well, the first one was some old ones that were there used to be a dearth of really good cartooning books. They just weren't around like that. And some artists who were very good artists would put books out that I really couldn't get involved in, because at a young age you just want to draw cartoons, But there were some people who had worked at Disney who did some smaller books which were fantastic. And I very quickly, I was very ambitious, so I go meet some people who were animators or directors when I was like 16, and they quickly told me, you're going to have to take life drawing. I was like, no, which is funny because it's like one of the things I do and I enjoy doing, but I just want to draw cartoons. But to improve it, at a certain point, I needed more than the books. But I like Preston Blair. He was influential to cartoonists all across the country. And then something else was very influential for me. It was a book by Richard Schickel. He was a Time magazine film reviewer.
Yeah.
And I was 13, and I was at a used bookstore to get like a book on Disney.
Yeah.
And they didn't have what I wanted, but they had this. It had no pictures at all. Imagine that. A whole book at Disney without a single picture. Like 40
I read that. Yeah, I read that.
Yeah. So I read the whole thing like in a week, and that was it. My fate was sealed. I was so taken away by the stuff that was being said about the Disney studios, and I've been such an admirer ever since. So, what do you have?
Funny, I just finished a book called Wild Minds about Disney and Fleischer. But the one quote that really stands out is that Disney was the genius who could steal genius. But he was both. I mean,
yes.
And that's what that Schickel book, that ripped my head off in high school. I remember that book like holy crap. I was a kid from 100 miles south of Chicago in the cornfields. And like, oh my God, you can go off and like think of stuff, and your brother helps you make money.
And no one invented the studio the way he did.
No, it was crazy.
Also,
Yeah,
the most thing I was most taken by is that they said there's one shot in Pinocchio that cost $25,000. That it's like he was crazy. How can
Yeah.
you do that? And that's funny because like now you need $25,000 to get like a candy bar, out of a vending machine. Just
A
joking.
Pinocchio candy bar.
Sorry with the candy bar metaphors. It's just all in humor.
Well,
But
Disney probably owns that candy bar on top of
that's
it.
right. But here's the thing about Disney. I don't think people give him enough credit. I really don't, even though people think they do. He was the first one with a sound cartoon.
Yeah.
He's the first one with a color cartoon. He's the first one with the Academy Award for a cartoon. He's the first one with a full-length feature. I mean, that's a lot, and the multi-billion camera, first one with a depth creating camera out of flat pictures. He just never stopped thinking.
Yeah.
I remember something, maybe I read it in this book, and I might not be telling it exactly, but at one point he seemed to get disillusioned and he was away from the studio for a while. And he built this like 3/4 length size train set in his backyard.
Yeah.
And he'd go with his grandkids up and down. Then all of a sudden one day he shows up at work. He has this gigantic diagram. He goes, "This is what we're building," and it's Disneyland.
Yeah.
That's a genius. That's a genius.
Well, I mean, I think it's so funny. So many people think that he had created, that he was just this great animation studio person, but he wasn't. What he did was he had used those things as they were important, and as animation was falling off, he got an itch. And like you said, he went out and looked at dioramas and scale models and trains, and suddenly it's like, I want to do an amusement park. And then, he does that, and then it's like, I want to build a city. And then he dies and we never got it.
Oh yeah, I know.
But, I mean, the guy had an itch that we all have, but God, he kept going.
Yes, that's absolutely. I mean, I'm not saying, I mean, the thing gets me is that if you saw pictures, they have some documentary pictures. I'm sure you see him on those trains. He's loving it. He's having a great time. You can't fake that.
No, he was.
Oh, brother. Yeah, it was interesting. We went to school for a brief period with some people who went to CalArts, and a lot of Disney guys were teaching. The instructors who were very good, great instructors who did things we knew.
Oh, yeah.
We'd seen them, and they would hear things, and I would be told, but how Disney interacted with the artists. Everything it was interesting, supportive and strategic at the same time. It seemed to be, But
David had a really good question, which is, what influenced you? Was there any of that Bern Hogarth stuff in there with kind of all that superhero large body stuff?
The thing that I mean, I think he's a great artist, but I'm more interested in the kind of ebb and flow, tilts, balance, counterbalance of the figure, not the
power,
all that musculature, because to me that's just not for me. I'm not saying for anyone else, but that's not as dynamic for me as just an interesting pose. Like if you have someone standing straight, all of a sudden you move the leg out this way, and the hip tilts, and the shoulder tilts, and wow, that's kind of takes a whole different look. It just transforms, So.
That's like David's work is the same way, which is there's so much weight and pause and gravity and all these other things that are influencing the body in his work. It's not always action, and I think what's so important about live drawing is that it doesn't teach you to draw; it teaches you to see. Right? That's why you still like it.
Yes, yeah, it's great. It's so important, and it's interesting too. And if you get it right, you don't have to get very complicated.
Yeah.
So
that's why I like live drawing, is it forces you to hyper focus on everything.
Right. That's
There's
right.
another thing about life drawing is I have many people saying I can't get a model and I can't afford it. And they have also said about my work that it seems as though it's about to run off the page. When your models are running horses and people on buses and people running on the beach, you got to learn to draw fast. The models are everywhere; they're just not holding still.
Oh yeah, no, I'm like that with I draw at the zoo, and considering it's almost like a equivalent of doing a still life, that'll move it every second. And so after doing that for a couple of months, people are looking over my shoulder when I'm drawing, saying, "How did you do that so fast?" I'm saying, because I have to.
Because you have to. That's
Yeah.
the other thing. Everybody thinks I'm a fast artist. If I didn't draw fast, they'd be gone.
Yeah. Well, when I first started, I just did not know how it was going to translate into cartoon work, but then I'd always be a little bit envious. I said, how do they do that? Like those Disney films would have the semi-realistic figures, like the adults in like a movie that had to do with like small animals, where they were, but it does, it's like, it's there, and then there are people who like Mary Blair. Oh my God, when I see her stuff, the design quality, they're still showing that stuff all over the web. So.
And I really don't hate rotoscoping. I think it's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was supposed to look kind of magical when they didn't have anything and have an equivalent.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. You can always tell when something's rotoscope, but I don't hate it.
Right. Does anybody yes.
Rotoscope? I'm curious, what's rotoscope?
Oh, it's tracing from actual film. You just trace the figures, and it makes for very realistic movements and things. And there's some of those early black and white, the clown that's dancing, and you see the prince in Sleeping Beauty, and it's not that I think it's an art form on its own. It's like a lot of people they hate the Italian cartoons, which are photographs with word balloons. I don't hate those. I think there's just another form.
Yeah, no, they're wonderful.
Yeah. I once saw at a small Comic Con, somebody had taken a bunch of cheap stamps, and they were using yellow legal pads, and they were using them to build their cartoon with the stamps. It was hilarious, well done, and funny, and it was extremely cheap and extremely funny. Just another way of doing it.
Sounds awesome.
Kadari, check out for rotoscope. Check out Ralph Bakshi in the 70s.
Oh yeah,
he was using it kind of to the penultimate level of good tracing.
Yeah, I mean,
how do you spell the last name?
Bakshi's probably the most notorious for it. I mean, though admittedly, it's, in a sort of almost creepy way, one of the best known ones is the Millie the Moocher cartoon, where they were
love it
away as a ghostly walrus, was it? And brilliant and uncanny,
horrible,
creepy at the same time.
Can I mention something really quickly? We're talking about liking bright colors and liking lighter things and not dark and scary. And for a long time, we have had the quote male gaze about girls, and girls are not sugar and spice. They're dark and scary, and look at their stuff on Instagram. So what women and girls actually deal with in many, many times are the most frightening things. Let's face it, they live in a war zone. And so whereas parents may think that the girls like the pink and the pretty and everything else, there's a reason Maleficent is a hero to us.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions?
What's your next book?
Well, that one is coming out, the Cute Collection, the Manga 100 Cute Collection, and then I have a book coming out following year, but that's it's all text. It's all about on the subject of creativity. I think I was really grateful that my publisher gave me a chance to do it. I think it's going to be really good, but then that's what I think because I'm enthusiastic. No, but I do think it's going to be really good. It comes from a different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, another thing I was wondering, you were saying 18 months for the standard. Do you have, at the same time, are you sort of, do you have a rotation where a lot of those titles are overlapping, at least as far as how the gears
all the time, and it's not easy to deal with because this is how it goes. You're working on a book. You've got like a month left to go, trying to meet the deadline. All of a sudden, you're hit with, we need you to edit this first draft. It's 140 pages. And I don't just like look at it and say it's fine. It takes me like a week and a half to do it. I'm going over every line and deciding this, deciding that. So it's hard to switch from something you're coming down the finish line. You're turning, you're sliding toward home. All of a sudden you have to stop and do a different thing. But they have the schedules and they have to follow them, the editors, so that we make it. And I have to help them do it. Yeah, deadlines and things and other schedules. Just you have to really. That's what this is about. Is you're publishing deadlines or overlapping schedules is just part of the terrain. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Chris,
Yeah.
you've been an art educator so long, and it seems that you keep yourself aware of the popular art styles so that you know what your market for your books are. But are there any other art educators that you look at, like Mark Kistler or people on the web or other authors that you admire that you think are good art educators?
I know Mark, by the way. He's a really nice guy. And he loves what he does. He's inventive. But I don't do that because I don't get my ideas from what other guys are doing. I'm looking a little more upstream a little more as far as further from, if it's already published, it's already being done. I'm generally looking in a different direction. And a lot of it has to do with what's popular that I like, that fits what I'm doing, rather than just art techniques about what I'm doing. There might be something in the zeitgeist, that is interesting. I mean, I want to do what I want to do. Sometimes I want to do a book on figure drawing, and I don't care who's doing it or not. But then I might think, well, what would be a contemporary way to do something that was done a long time ago? Yeah, if that answers you.
Are there any artists out there? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, and then I'll catch up.
Are there any artists out there who haven't done instructional books who you'd love to see do one?
No, I mean, if they want to do one, like, great. Sometimes I look and I'll see one and I'll think, this is pretty interesting. I like this, or I like what they're doing. Although sometimes I think the characters could be more like this, more like that, but I still think it's very well done. I have very particular taste about characters and that they should be appealing on every level. Matter of fact, I had a professor at NYU once say, when you do a villain, your audience has to like the villain. You can't do a villain that they find disgusting. And although that can't be universally true, because we've seen characters like that, especially in sci-fi, I understood the point he made. If I don't like anything about the character, if it's not, there's nothing, even his maybe it's his devious villainy, that, I mean, there could be, you can have fun with that. You can make it charming. You can make it, make him sweetly lying, and maybe something fun to play with. But sometimes I find I could like someone's work, but think that their characters aren't quite communicating with the reader. You going to say something, Dale? No.
Well, could I ask that question again? Because what he actually asked was, you have artists that you like, but they have not done instructional booklets. Who that you have seen that you like, that you would like to do instructional booklets like you?
Who would I like to see do it?
Yes. Who are you out there that has not done an instructional booklet and you like their art and you would like them to do it?
Well, I'll be completely honest. I don't care if they do it. They can do it or not do it.
Oh, no, not as competition, but as just, somebody that you would like to see those books, that it would be fun.
I don't know, I just appreciate it for what it is. If I really like it, I just like it. I mean, I look at Modigliani, it's just like, I can't imagine liking it more any specific way, or some of the Disney drawings, the original Disney drawings from like great movies like Lady and the Tramp.
Mhm, mhm.
And I mean, I guess it would be great, and some of them have, but
Mhm.
it's not something that I just try to appreciate what I'm seeing. I see a lot of great stuff on the web, really, some wonderful artists. Sometimes
Mhm.
we stir up a dialogue, and sometimes some artists do contact me who are artists doing a how to draw book and things like that. That's
Mm,
great.
mhm.
There's enough room for everybody.
Chris,
Yes.
you talked about how you have looked at the current trends, such as superheroes and manga, and now you have this later book where you were inspired of how you can create through these random shapes. And you're staying current by observing what the pop culture is focusing on. Are you really doing instructional books, or are you doing backwards engineering books explaining this art form to the kids?
People like to use them for different reasons. Some people just want to draw particular genre and those characters, and they get my books to draw those characters, and they love it. That's wonderful. Then some people want to learn the skills to draw, and those characters will be part of what they're drawing. It's a little bit different. So they really could serve. It's really up to the reader. But I'm not trying to bring any style along. Sometimes people do want me to do this style or that style. I mean, I come up with a lot of ideas and I work on them. I mean, some of the ideas I've had for years, and they keep changing. And it's it's like it's like this. It's like, you ever hear a piano tuner? He comes over and he taps one key, goes bum 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 bum, and he tunes it. Bum, it's annoying as hell. Bum bum bum, and they do this over and over and over again for 20 minutes, and suddenly it sounds good, sounds different, and it stays sounding good. That's like what it is for me with ideas. I turn it this way, change it this way, change a word. I also spend a lot of time working on subtitles. Sometimes I think a subtitle should actually be the title, then I need a different subtitle. Then I have the modifier for the title. Then I have and the worst thing is you come up with this a fantastic title, and you realize I have no idea what to do with it, so you can't use it. Yes. Yes, Stan, what's going on?
Well,
Yes.
since these books are such a primary, well, I assume are your primary career, what is the process? I mean, do you come up with the idea, then do you come up with thumbnails or a pitch? Could you walk through the process of creating a book briefly, and approximately how long it takes you to provide the materials to the publisher?
At this point, I don't usually present ideas, cartoons or figure drawings. I don't usually do that because they just assume I've got a body of work that I can draw. If it's something really different, I would provide a few, but that's not the usual thing. Like this, I did for this Squiggles and Wiggles though. I did, because I hadn't done something quite like this, and I kind of want to show it to myself, but it wasn't a lot. There were like 3 or 4 fully realized drawings that ended up in the book in color, and the publisher thought they were so cute. It's great to hear that, because I did too. I thought this would be a lot of fun, just fun. But earlier on, and especially my first book, they had me do almost a storyboard of the book. They had the storyboard like sheet and all 144 pages of it, and they want to know what's going to be on every single sheet. So I had to write down verbiage for every, not complete page, but this will cover this and this will cover this and this, and for like 140 pages. And I think I gave them a sample chapter. So, on the first project, you have to go a bigger step because they don't know you can do it. They want to make sure you can do it. And so there was and also there was the concept. And I have had to do it once in a while for different things, just to be sure, but generally not. But if you were to propose something, first of all, the most important thing you can do is read the website of the publisher. People they decide they're going to do something and they don't read the website of the publisher. And sometimes they'll do something different. The publisher say, I only want to see 6 pages. And they'll say, this is so good, I'll explain it, I'll give them 12. You have to understand, a publisher is getting thousands of submissions a month, or maybe hundreds, and so is the agent. Their first job in their mind is to find out why they can say no, because they only want to end up with, who knows, 30, 40, or 100 drawing, proposals at the end of the day. They don't go home with 800 proposals. So the first thing they do is say, this guy doesn't listen, I'm not going to use him. And I had actually one person, because I worked in Hollywood for a while, writing screenplays for various studios. And I remember that the screenplays are a very specific format, not like a regular format. And one person who was inspiring screenwriter said to me, I said, unless you put this in the right format, and exactly the right format, they won't read it. And he said to me, what do you think about that? I said, well, they're going to assume that you really don't know screenwriting and you don't know how to write. And I was a little more outspoken back then. I said, and they would be right. Unless you know how to do this, you're not going to know when to cut, what the slug line is, how long a line of dialogue is, that a scene is only 2 pages. You're with the 12 and 15-page scenes, So format is, following the instructions is very important. If they say 1 page, give it in 1 page. This is I'm only telling you guys my opinion based on my experience. Now, within that, there are different ways to do things. Like children's books is very competitive. You think it's a children's book, they're like a sweet children's book, it's very competitive. Everybody wants to write a children's book. Everybody thinks they can write a children's book. Obviously, it's a real talent to it, and maybe people in this group, because you're cartoonists, can do it. But when everyone's doing something, you have to stand out. This is just my approach, and I'm not saying you should use it and give me all sorts of warnings here, but I don't do it like that, or I didn't used to do that. If I were submitting something to a publisher in a genre that I didn't do for my other publishers, they don't know me as well. So the first thing I would do is tell them my credits, not what the story is about. All the books I read would say, tell them your story. No. Tell them you did this, you did this, you did this. So suddenly it's like, I'll save this one. That was my strategy. So anyway, I think it's a pretty good one, but not everybody does. I want to give the person a reason to continue to read. They also give you an index you can review on your book when you hand it in. They'll show you the index. I don't think there's much sense in going over that. I mean, I don't think someone's not going to buy your book because the index isn't really zippy. But it's kind of cool to see how they're viewing it, because like you might have like a little scene about a car, and they might say index, cars, people in cars, driving the car, speeding, getting a ticket, and all the subheadings of that index. You think, wow, I really did a lot on that. Yeah, were you gonna say something, Kidari? Were you gonna say something?
Oh, yeah,
Sorry.
no worries, it's my bad. Like, how did you start drawing, and how old were you when you started? Well, I know we've all been drawing, but since a certain age.
How old were you when you started?
I don't know. I know I was a toddler, but generally speaking, but I guess drawing in particular, the skill, I've been doing it as far as I can remember, since I was.
Well, I had a similar situation. There's a time in your life. I mean, I have memories from way back early, so I'm 3 and 4, but I generally sort of like woke up at 6 or 7. When I was 7 years old, I remember everything. And I remember drawing. I just drew. I thought everybody did. I was very surprised when not everybody did. So, but when I was 13 is when I decided that I want to get good at this. But so and so then I got some books and some of this, and I tried, and there are other people in school who are very talented cartoonists. One is still a friend of mine. He worked at Disney, and I should call him this weekend. We talk every like month or so. So yeah, it was always a through line. But when I was working in Hollywood, I really wasn't drawing. I was all focused on the screenplays. I guess, you know, for me, the creativity came from the same place. I was pouring it onto the page with writing. Then I didn't have it in me to continue drawing like that. But at one point, my books were really taking off faster than my screenplays were taking off. And I knew I had to make a decision. And I think I made the right one. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Like, it's pretty neat. Like, it's interesting because, like, I was wondering a couple of minutes ago, like, if you did any work for screenplays, like, what are some screenplays that you did work for, like drawing?
Well, they didn't get produced. I got paid to write for 20th Century Fox, Pathé, MGM Pathé, Paramount, Showtime cable channel. I did work on some shows that got produced with the TV shows, two TV shows for NBC. But what I liked is, it can break your heart to work on a screenplay, and even if you get paid for it and it doesn't get made, that happens all the time in Hollywood. And when you do a book, it gets made. So all of a sudden, there it is. You do another one, there it is. I was like, gee, this is pretty good,
Does make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And there's something
I
like maybe
also
they're like, oh, sorry.
no, I also worked for Mad Magazine. I worked on a Blondie comic strip. Those those experiences were as writers, not artists.
It's pretty neat. Like, how do you get that flow of creativity for writing? Because I feel like, I guess personally, it's been easier for me to like put something on paper than it is to come up with, things to write.
For what?
It's just, I guess, like personally speaking, it's been easier for me to come up with like just to put pen to paper for drawing than it is to
Mhm.
come up with writing stuff. Like, how do you get that creative juice for it, like for writing creatively?
Well,
Or
I think everybody has a personal journey in their creativity. I really do. And I think that that's not a bad thing that you have found you get through it a little more easily on drawing than writing. And it's up to you to decide all these things for yourself, but that's an interesting thing, don't you think? Don't you think it says something about your creativity, where it wants to go?
think so.
I'll tell you something else. People sometimes will work with a partner who works on the area that they're not quite where it's a little like pushing, and they don't want to. I remember I was very busy I had my book contracts, and I really wanted to do a graphic novel. And this is 15 years ago, 12 years ago, something like that. And I knew a woman who was just a great manga artist in this specific genre, not just like of manga. I was doing a very specific genre. She was like the best. So I asked her, I'll write it. Will you draw it? So I can continue with my stuff, because I could write that very fast, but I wouldn't have been able to draw it as fast or like her. And I thought it came out great. I thought she did such a great job with it. It sold very nicely. And I was very proud of it. And I know she liked it too, but it was a heck of a journey for her, because it's 200 pages, graphic novel, 200 pages, and every single one she did with detail. I mean, she was amazing. We're talking about doing another book together. Sometimes, some people do both. You might also consider perhaps your writing, maybe simplify it a little bit. That's another way to, maybe you just want to push forward and do it with the same energy as this, but you could do it that way. Or you might choose something that doesn't require so much verbiage. People do that all the time with picture books. The pictures tell most of the story. On the other hand, you're a young guy, maybe you find a certain genre for writing, and you say, like, oh, with mysteries, I can go like this, and you know something about yourself. So maybe you just haven't found it, but you're on your way.
Those make a lot of sense. Like, I guess just kind of working on those strengths and finding people who can go on the other things that might be uphill battles, I guess.
Yeah, that happens. That happens. You know, sometimes you can also find something that's in the public domain and update it. I mean, there've always been movies of things from like, you know, that have been from the 1800s, early 1900s that are in the public domain. And if the rights are free and clear, put your spin on it with your art, and it's easier to write because you know where it's going. It's already worked out. I'm not saying to do that. I'm just saying you could look into that.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah. Wendy, you had a question? Are you muted, ma'am?
Hi. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Chris, thank you so much. I wanted to first say I'm an adult who's teaching myself how to draw. I just recently started,
Oh.
and being overwhelmed by the amount of how-to literature there is out there. I just wanted you to know that I've turned to your books again and again as a touchstone that has, I think, diagrammatically and pedagogically way to break apart a complex collection of forms. I've been surprised that when it sticks in my head like a basic vocabulary, and I wanted to let you know how effective I think you are at showing a sort of three-dimensional shape, irregular, that can come in as a placeholder for imagining a body and things. So I wanted to thank you while I had a chance, that when I sit down to a blank page, I have images from your books come up. When I don't know what to do, I'm like, oh, I can draw that weird curve from the humongous book of cartooning or whatever.
Oh, sure. Oh, thank you. It's so nice of you to say so. I appreciate that. What kind of style do you like to draw in? What kind of drawings do you draw?
What kind of drawings am I drawing?
Yeah, is it life drawings, is it cartoons?
I'm trying everything. I don't know what I'm doing yet. I don't know the right way to go. I don't know the right way to teach myself. And so I think I do a little bit. I feel like I learn a lot from copying. I copy every single page of all your books, of all the books I work from. I feel like I learn decision making from them. And then I put some time in trying to build from blocks like what you're showing often, and then I do life drawing as well. But I wanted to make sure to ask you what you think is the element of learning to draw that you think most people don't give enough time to. I notice people talk about milestones like, well, I have this down, now I'm going to move on to this, and I'm wondering if there's something that you think you can never devote enough time to.
Well, that's a big question. Okay. Well, because there are all sorts of things that you could, there's proportions, there's features, there's the figure, there's the dynamic moving. But I would say if I had to choose any particular thing, it would be spend more time on the construction of the character or figure than you spend adding the clothes and doing the details. People always do it the other way around. And that doesn't mean just like a mechanical looking, put feeling in it and this, but really basic and very abbreviated. And when you're doing the figure, you're looking for the shape of the rib cage. You're looking for the tilt of the rib cage. the tilt of the hips, making it sort of like a bucket, so it looks like it has dimension. You're looking at that one foot that's straight is pushing the hips up here, and the leg that's relaxed is moved away here. And you're looking for all the dynamics, and when all that is you've got it, then you move on to the other stuff, and you won't believe how much better it looks. Your step from that part to this part is so much better. Most people just start here, they forget that, they go, oh, I'll go right onto this. This is where it happens. Matter of fact, sometimes I would show videos. I do cartoons like this. I do a kind of a structure of a head of something, and put it this way, and really spend time. I go, now, it's almost done. You see what this is, don't you? And then I do it for demonstration. They'd be looking at it, and the audience would go, what is it? What is it? Well, this is a bear, isn't it? What do you mean? I said, well, watch. Here's the nose. Here's the eye. Here's this neck. That's a bear, isn't it? And they're like, that is, it already was. You see, if you're waiting for a nose and the lips to define the shape of the head, you don't have it. So that's what I would say. But look, you may find your own way also.
No, I love that. And I also, you mentioned proportion earlier, and one thing I noticed in your drawings that I find so playful and freeing and creative is that when you establish that initial form, proportion can be wild and it works.
Mm-hmm.
You have these extreme triangular shapes, and it still is completely clear what you were trying to convey. So
see, that's a great comment. See, if you do cartoons that have really exaggerated proportions, it doesn't mean you need to know proportions. Doesn't mean you're going to use regular proportions and exaggerate them like cartoon characters. It's just too weird. But here's the thing. Somebody else might say, I want to give him long legs, and he has long legs on this character. But if you know proportions, it also means counterbalance. Long legs, squash the upper body, add long arms, so you have long, squashed, long. Those are proportions. So you actually are saying something with the exaggeration. You're pacing with the exaggeration rather than just making something bigger and making something smaller. So, proportions are a way of creating rhythm in a cartoon. That's a great point.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good. Yes. Yes, Dale.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Chris, would you mind giving like a little brief synopsis of your education and how you learn these things? And I'd also be interested to hear how you ended up as a screenwriter, because I'd never heard of that in your history.
Well, it just doesn't seem to be particularly apt for my bio. You don't want a gigantic bio in the back of an art instruction book. Although I tell you, the screenwriting really helped me, because I noticed when I first started that a lot of people just they put a lot of stuff together to instruct, but it wasn't an experience. It was just a didactic tool. I mean, it didn't come up and pay off and repeated character. I know all that stuff from screenwriting. And so I wanted it to be an experience. And so I went to NYU Film School, and that really helped. I felt I didn't think it would help. It was just totally unrelated, but for books, it is. For the long form, it is. Now, if you're doing just, you're doing spot gags and things, it may not have any application. So I went to CalArts for briefly, and I didn't want to do animation. It was just, I found it tedious, and I actually want to be more involved in story. But it didn't seem that's what was going on. And so I left. And at NYU, I was able to do screenwriting and get involved in story that way. I also went to a Silvermine School of Art, Paris School of Art, and also just drew, on my own. A lot of anatomical models to help. Oh, they're on the floor now? Okay. But CalArts is really good. I sometimes I wish I had stayed there, but then I wouldn't have been able to do what I did here. I mean, there were, when you work on stories for like screenplays, even more than television, it's a complex thing. There are many layers. There are second agendas, hidden agendas, things that pay off, and characters that don't know something and the things are revealed. And so you ask questions of yourself when you work that adds more dimension to your book, because you have a lot of pages to work with. So, anybody else want to say something? Have something to ask or
Chris,
coming up themselves?
did I understand that correctly then? Your books they're not just an instruction book, but they're an experience that the student goes through.
No, I don't mean it that way. They are instruction books. They're all, but it's like that Disney version book. I read it, and it wasn't just like, oh, I learned about Disney. I had an experience about Disney Corporation, about Walt Disney himself. I felt something coming out of that. If somebody loves manga and they read my book, they're going to have a manga experience. They're not just going to see something about, I'll draw the stick figure here. It builds, everything builds to a crescendo, and then goes in depth in certain areas, and interesting things will continue with interesting things. That's just, I used to tell people that I would see this all the time in an art instruction book. Somebody would talk about perspective, and they'd have a chair perspective, and I'd have a chair perspective. The difference is mine would be a throne with a dragon behind it. There are other differences, but that's a pretty telling difference. So, they always say, you have to know this stuff. Well, you do, but you don't have to, you can entertain them while they learn it. It could be fun. I mean, I have to have my vitamin C like everybody else, but I'd rather have orange juice than a supplement. Yes, yes, I'm sorry. Maureen, were you saying something?
My question is, what type of pencils or pens do you work with? Do you have favorites?
Well, I don't know. I generally don't work with pens. I like them to some extent if they're really required, but they're not very forgiving, so I think that I like a lot of them, and I don't use all that many. There's kind of there's a small amount of them, but I use, there's some things I use just a ton of, but I really can't say, because I've used many different art supplies, and it's just whatever is required for the particular thing. Certain art supplies are very good for certain things, and certain ones aren't good. I always say that when you go to art store, take a pad with you, scratch pad, try it out. I mean, they let you do it. My experience is that they let you do it. Because otherwise, I used to come back as, I don't like this. What are you done? What are you gonna do? But
most of the good art stores have the scratch pad there, so
yeah.
Right. Oh, they do? I didn't know that.
Artisan Craftsman does anyway.
We're lucky we have a big Michael's right here. I mean, big store, so get anything you want, and there are many good stores.
Mm. And anyway, anybody else? Oh, Dale.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you see an art trend on the horizon like you saw with superheroes and manga? That you just did the squiggle one, and you have the book on creativity, but is there anything that you're seeing coming that interests you?
Well, there are many things, and I've been talking to my publisher about it, but not all the things that I see are something I want to do. There are many considerations besides just as something popular. Something being popular, I remember I had someone tell me one time that I really should, someone in the industry say, this is really popular, and I remember saying to them, yes, everybody loves it. Nobody will want to draw it. Nobody's going to draw this. So you have to kind of have a feeling. You have to feel what your reader feels, not to say, you have a good idea for them. I mean, if you see my cartoons, they're kind of like fun. They kind of communicate. They're like, you get a feeling from them. If they're sad, you feel sad. They're cute, you feel cute. You got to feel that for your reader also, So I hope that answers your question.
It does, but I still have hope that you'll do an H.P. Lovecraft book someday.
Okay, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Yes, Amy.
This is a little tangential, but as you've drawn over the years, I mean, this is something that's happened with me, is that whenever I'm looking at people now, I can see their skulls underneath the skin and stuff like that. Does that happen to you? It's weird.
Not the skull, but other things. It's true.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I don't mean anything bad. What I'm saying is that sometimes, and this happens fairly often, I'll be walking along with my wife and I'll say, look at that. She'll say, what? See, you notice how the clouds are converging with a horizon line at an angle toward the right? Yeah, stuff like that.
Yes.
Or I'll look at somebody and wonder why their face looks a little on the odd side. I'll realize that their cheekbones are a little higher, attached a little higher to the head than generally. Things like that. Especially someone's looking, it's like they're at a 3/4 rear view where they're back this way and you can't really see. I want to chisel it out with my eyes just over and over again, just so I get it. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes,
That's great stuff. I love that.
And I almost wanted my husband to get me a pair of Google glasses so that, because sometimes I see things or people that are so interesting and I don't have time to draw it and I just want to go click so that I can then do it later, from that.
Yeah.
And today, I was watching bubbles that were flying because they had a bubble machine. And I'd never realized that you see really cool mathematical images on the bubbles.
Yes. I'm gonna tell you another one. I tell this to people when they're like, no, I want to tell me if you see this sometime. When you drive, almost every time when you drive, you'll see the clouds above you horizontally. You're driving this way, you see them this way. You never see them going vertically. You never see streaks of clouds this way. Why? I mean, it's almost 100% of the time. It's got to be an optical illusion. It's got to be because the clouds are so long that it's making you think they're horizontal when actually they're also vertical. But if you look at the overhead, you'll see they're either slightly diagonal or horizontal, but you won't see them going parallel with you. You think you drive like a million miles in your life. Sooner or later, you're going to see a parallel cloud, but I haven't seen one yet. So it may not be the most interesting insight of mine, but it's one of them.
Interesting. Well, thank you.
Sure, that's interesting though. Appreciate that.
I got a quick question about when you're doing a style.
What?
I know that when I've been watching animation or a movie or anything like that, immediately after watching it, all of a sudden everything I see is in the style of what I've been watching. Does that happen to you?
I don't know. I don't know. No, not exactly. But
my brain just reinterprets everything as the style of the thing I've been watching. Like if I watch a Warner Brothers cartoon, suddenly everything's a Warner Brothers cartoon.
Yeah.
Well, that's not bad.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Well, I was just going to point out that we are nearly at 7 o'clock here, and I think Christopher has just done the most amazing presentation.
Oh, definitely.
And we've had some of the best questions from people.
Yeah.
I think this is one of our better presentations here.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a good sign where I only showed one of your pictures, Christopher, and nobody complained. Well,
we're just gonna all have to go get his books.
Yes, indeed.
Keep this man in business.
Yeah, seriously, Christopher, this was fantastic.
Oh, thanks. You can put it on the YouTube one if you put it in there if you like.
Oh, definitely.
That's why he's recording it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. No,
Thank you.
Wonderful job. Wonderful job. We really enjoyed it.
It was a lot of fun.